Hi, good morning. Good to see all of you. This was a great, I think the kickoff on the implementation sites was awesome to kind of set the stage for talking about family partnerships. My name is Noelle Kelty. I am an assistant professor at Saginaw Valley State University, and I also support the MiMTSS TA Center with anything having to do with building family partnerships. So I feel so lucky to be able to tap into the importance of building and sustaining family partnerships and to bring you into that conversation today. So this will be a fairly interactive session. So I will have a come back together signal that all of you know. So when you see me up here with my arm up, you'll know that we're coming back together. We'll have some opportunity to move around the room. You'll have some opportunity for table talk. So this session will engage you with some active participation. And any of the other things that you see on the screen, we all know, so I will move on. So please, your feedback is important. I think Michelle had mentioned that prior, that your feedback really helps us in driving what we do next and supporting the field around MTSS, family partnerships, et cetera. So moving on from there. We will not, I don't think we're going to be using these team roles much, but you have them in your back pocket in case we move on with that. And then this is an overview of our session. And the part I want to highlight is really what we're going to delve into today, our providing that research-informed foundation for facilitating partnerships. This will be in alignment with Michigan's family engagement framework, the My Family Framework. Really, what is that framework? What are those supporting principles? And what are some of those evidence-based strategies for improving family partnerships? So I'm hoping today you leave with some solid ideas, like you'll be jazzed up to implement one or many of the ideas that either I or your colleagues talk about in today's session. So this kind of just covers that we'll be talking about the research-based importance of family engagement and really working to build up kind of that repertoire of strategies and supports that you too can implement within your programs and services. Okay, so let's start with the importance of family partnerships. Why do family partnerships matter? I feel like I was talking to a colleague last week and I said, one of the things that daunts me the most about this session today is I present on family engagement and family partnerships all the time, but I don't usually do it with the people who do family partnerships the best, and that is early childhood. I just strongly feel that as an early childhood educator myself, there's a lot of strategies and activities that we just rock out in the space of early childhood that if those were just lifted up to K-12, we'd be doing a great job. So I think in a lot of ways I'm speaking with a choir today, which is why I wanted to provide some opportunities for all of you to share with each other what is working, what are some things that you really think you want to incorporate within your own programs and services, and how are those really aligned to what the research says works? So we're going to start with our first activity, identify an elbow partner. Maybe you could get creative and find an elbow partner you haven't met yet today, so moving around a little bit. Identify your name, program location, and then talk for a minute with each other. When you think about partnerships, and I mean any partnership, what does the word partnership mean to you? That you have had in your own life, what words come to mind that describe those partnerships? So we're going to take about 2 or 3 minutes for you to share with each other, what does partnership mean to you? awesome. It's working fairly well. Thank you. Okay, so I'm hearing words like collaboration, teaming, support. Do we have any brave souls that are interested in walking up to a microphone and sharing some of the thoughts that your pair had? Or just that want to yell out? That's okay too. There's got to be someone.
I can yell out from online.
Go for it.
Awesome. A couple of that are in here. Working collaboratively towards a common goal. Collaboration, respect, and support. In it together to achieve shared goals. Teaming up, helping, supporting, and sharing.
Those are really good ones. Trust. Yeah, huge, like 3 stars next to that one. Yeah. Absolutely. Lots of head nodding with that. Any other words?
Safe.
What's that?
Safe.
Safe. Feeling safe. And to feel safe, you have to build that trust, those trusting relationships. Absolutely.
Being vulnerable.
Absolutely. Being vulnerable. So you're opening yourself up, and that promotes that reciprocal partnership. Because when you're vulnerable, you're probably going to support that same vulnerability in somebody else. Absolutely. Okay, great thoughts. This is a wonderful way for us to start planting ourselves in the importance of family engagement, family partnerships. I'm just going to give the caveat that I'm interchangeably using the terms family engagement and family partnerships. We're really working to move toward the term family partnerships, and so is the research, with the idea that family partnerships are a lot more inclusive and really push that term of not just bringing a family into something that's happening, but co-creating and providing that reciprocity, that shared equal relationship with a family, which is kind of what we're moving toward. So family engagement. When we support family partnerships, family engagement, we're improving those classroom dynamics, teacher expectations, student-teacher relationships, and classroom competence. So again, these are all research-based. I've got citations at the bottom of each slide. Really, what this slide tells me, and the ones that follow, is that engaging families in high-quality, trusting relationships isn't just a nice thing to do, and I'm preaching to the choir on this one, isn't just a nice thing to do, it's a needed thing to do. When we're engaging families as partners in their child's education, we're doing things like improving school dropout rates from birth, dropout rates, and fostering improved educational aspirations. And here in the space of early childhood, an important thing for us to think about is we're setting that foundation for families to engage with their child's school from the very beginning. So if we're setting those expectations in a 3-year-old pre-K or GSRP or Head Start classroom, that this is a model of how we partner and engage with families, this is what our model looks like, that will be the expectation our parents will go to kindergarten with. So that's going to foster those reciprocal relationships, expectations, advocacy from the very beginning. So as awesome as we are in the early childhood space of engaging families, I think sometimes we do underestimate our importance on how those have a lasting impact on children and families throughout their educational career. Family experiences are significant predictors of cognitive skills and social emotional skills. So there's been so much research out there that says just having those conversations at home with a family that knows the daily routine, has an idea of what adult-child interactions in the classroom look like, know what the curriculum expectations are, et cetera. Tell me what happened today at large group time. And having those conversations at home, that fosters those connections for the child to promote those best cognitive and social emotional skills later. We're reinforcing what's being learned in the classroom and the home. Those child outcomes improve considerably when schools and families collaborate on child needs, goals, programs, et cetera. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that today. Why do family partnerships matter? Really, we're looking at that positive impact on a child's healthy development. These are some of the things that we really look at as being kind of those hallmarks of high-quality family partnerships, those regular communications that go back and forth, inviting ideas from families. So less of, here's what we're doing, come and participate in our thing, and more of, what is it that you need? Let's co-plan this together and then offer this together to the whole school in partnership. Connecting families together as resources. Over and over, we see in the research that family engagement and child outcomes are improved when a family feels connected to their child's school. And the more they connect with other families, the closer they feel to their child's school. So those are important connections to make. Sharing observation of children's behavior with families. We had some really great ideas from the implementation teaming presentation this morning. I feel like we're developing more and more alignment in the work that we do in our early childhood space and in incorporating those family engagement pieces together. Showing respect for families and their caregiving practices. I don't know about you all, but I have seen this in the field. I've walked into a school where I have seen welcome, opening environment where we accept families as they are. They come to us as they are, and we support them in a way that is guided by their own goals and interests. And I have also walked into schools where there's more of a top-down approach between the school staff and the families are more asked to get in line with the expectations of the program in school, and there isn't that welcoming environment isn't fostered. And I've talked to families in both types of schools, and families in both of those schools have said repeatedly, I feel included in the school. I feel like if there was a day that we just, this was a GSRP parent, this always stuck with me down in Detroit, super welcoming environment. I felt like a rock star when I walked in the school because I came in at the same time as the children and families, and all the school staff had lined up in the hallway. They do it every single day at morning drop-off, and they welcome every single family. And it was a dad that said to me, if I have a day where I just don't want to bring my kid into school, I know it's going to be noticed. I know that us being here every morning matters. So they felt that peace. They felt that connection. We're not just coming into a welcoming school environment. We're part of that welcoming school environment, and those are important things to think about. So let's talk about what equitable family partnerships look like. Most of the practices I've talked about today, and many of the concepts that you all threw out already this morning, foster equitable partnerships, where we focus on meaningful engagement activities and systems between schools and families that do not characterize or treat specific parent groups as deficit in their levels of engagement. Again, we're coming in with a strength-based approach with families. And I have talked to quite a few teachers and administrators, and I'll be talking a little bit about the My Family Framework and the 24 focus groups we conducted across the state of Michigan to really inform that, as well as a stakeholders group at the Michigan Department of Education that informed the work. And I have had parents, school staffs say to me, well, there's just some parents you can't engage. They just don't care. They don't want what's best for their family. They treat us like a babysitting service. If we're coming in with that deficit-based approach, it's really hard to build that trust. It's really hard to build those reciprocal relationships. So really working together to understand more about the family, their beliefs, their cultures, their background, and really engaging them as part of the school environment is so important. Including those specific practices or approaches that reflect the values of a general group of families, as well as systems and tailored supports that really coordinate the hard work between families and schools. So I'm seeing more and more schools that have a family liaison. I think that's amazing. I think that we're moving away from doing what we've always done in engaging families to moving toward more database solutions in engaging families, and that is wonderful. We really need to think about how are we engaging families in that informative process. So if we're identifying gaps, we have these family nights and families never come. Why is that? Who do you think the first people are that we should go to start informing why family engagement nights are not successful? Ask them, ask the families, exactly. See, I know, you guys know all this. So this is the Michigan's Family Engagement Framework. How many of you have seen this before? I love that. So in my prior position, I was with the Michigan Department of Education, and I supported the development of the My Family Framework in collaboration across all offices within MDE and with about 48 other stakeholders across the state. Some of you are in this room, so thank you for your hard work on this. So the 24 focus groups and the Family Engagement Stakeholders Committee worked hard to develop this definition of family engagement. It's a collaborative relationship between families, educators, providers, and partners to support and improve the learning, development, and health of every learner. So we really worked to make this a whole child definition of family engagement, really worked to make this an inclusive definition of family engagement. We went back to family groups specifically to get feedback on this, and there were dozens of tweaks. The piece that you're going to see next to this are those family engagement principles that truly support those high-quality practices to foster an asset-based approach to engaging families. You probably can't read these really well, because I can't either. So, and I'm not going to go into depth with you on the My Family practices, but I want you to have access to the resources. So on the screen, and if you just Google Michigan Family Engagement Framework, it'll pop right up, unless my computer's just weird that way, but I think it'll pop right up for you. It'll identify the policies, not the policies, we don't have those, the definition and the principles for the My Family Framework. It will dive into examples of what these principles in action could look like for you. So it wasn't an accident that the top principle is relationships are the cornerstone of family engagement. If we don't have trusting relationships with families and with each other within our school or district environment, it's really hard to move into the other principles. I strongly feel, and lots of folks in the field with me also feel that if you don't have strong relationships between families in your school or amongst each other, that would be your place to start. Your place to start would be enacting some of the strategies that are within the resource for the My Family Framework. And we're going to talk a little bit about other strategies today, but starting there. Really having a belief that family engagement activity should be totally tied to student learning outcomes. So if you're offering a family engagement event with co-planning with your families, that event should be tied to your standards and your curriculum. So fun activities that don't have an early learning basis, those are awesome and fun. A way to scale that up would be to bring in some activities and strategies that really promote student learning outcomes. So I know of one program, for instance, GSRP and Head Start, and they had always done like muffins for mom, donuts for dad, things like that. And it's a great social opportunity, it is. And it's a way for families to come into the school and connect. A way to scale that up is, let's take a look at our TS Gold data. Where are we struggling? Oh, wow, our math scores are not doing so good. Like, we're really struggling in math. Maybe if we were to engage our families within some of these math concepts that we're really working on, by having interactive math activities during Muffins with Mom and Donuts for Dad, we're tying this family engagement activity to student learning outcomes, and we're finding ways to connect those families after that event so they feel more supported in helping to develop their children's math skills. So just one off-the-cuff example. Another thing that you'll see within this framework are some high to low impact strategy charts. You'll see one for early childhood, elementary, middle and high school, and out of school time. And these charts, like we always say, those low impact strategies, nothing wrong with those. Like definitely not dogging the low impact strategies. It is a guide to help you think, okay, so we're doing this activity that may be a lower medium strategy. Here are some ways that we can just scale up to make our strategy more impactful for children and families. So some other things you'll see on that site are some really great resources to support family engagement and literacy development. Really great tool. So if you haven't been there, take some time. I saw a bunch of you jump on your phones and laptops when I mentioned it. So hey, use this time because you know you're going to leave here and have 15 million things to do. So if you're focusing on family engagement right now for this time, that's wonderful. So the one thing I wanted to introduce to you also is a dual capacity framework. This was developed by the U.S. Department of Education, and there's a lot of alignment between the dual capacity framework and the My Family framework. This was created I want to say around 2013, because that's what the screen says, and really identifies what are some challenges, barriers, activities, and strategies to really promote family engagement at the classroom, school, and district level. This was designed as a P20 framework, just as the My Family framework is designed as a P20 framework. The reason I introduce it is because this is a lot of alignment between the My Family and framework and this one. And if you're looking to enrich kind of your toolbox for family engagement, this might be a really good place to go. So we're going to have our next activity kind of together with a partner as a table or as a set of 3 or 4, however you want to group up. Think about what are those biggest barriers to partnering with families that you see in early childhood programs. So kind of brainstorming what those barriers might be. And on the other side of the page, do a little brainstorming with your team. What are some of the ways to overcome those barriers to partnering with families? And then once you've kind of actually, how are we doing on time? Yeah, we'll stop there. So on one side of the page, identifying some barriers, other side of the page, identify some potential solutions. And if you have a chance within the time we have to find another team to kind of share your brainstorming, that would be awesome. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to work on this, so maybe that'll give some people a chance to kind of brainstorm with another group. And then we will do the hands up. And just think about what are some of those themes that you identify within your barriers, and what are some of those themes that you're identifying with your potential solutions. Okay, go. Okay. I was overhearing some great conversations. So in thinking about the barriers and thinking about some of your opportunities to overcome those barriers, I was wondering if we might have any tables that would be interested in doing a quick share out. Oh, I know we have two. Woohoo!
We talked about a lot of things. We talked about time as being something that's restricted. Staff willingness, like some staffs are more willing to give of their time and to stay after during contracted time and things like that. Resources, like can you have a family meal with your families? Do you have that allocated in your budget? We talked about how some of our families have traumatic experiences with schools. Like they may not be the most successful, or they didn't have a high level education. School was not a successful place for them. And so recognizing where people come from is really super important. Just the culture of your school environment. You know, I have this saying in my office that says kindness changes everything. And I believe that. Like, if you're kind, it makes a huge difference. And then just meeting people where they are at, knowing where their needs are and meeting where they're at is super helpful. So those are some of the things our group talked about.
That was great.
Yeah.
You guys had a rich conversation. Wonderful. Yeah. And you identified, a lot of things that we'll be talking about, and I'm going to guess any other group that's going to share is going to say ditto to a lot of these things, especially when we talk about resource allocation. That's important. I mean, if we were here all day, I would be brainstorming with you guys on that, or if we had your administrators, because sometimes it's really hard if we have classroom teachers without the administrators that can kind of think about the allocation of time and money to help make things happen. It's good. Any other groups? She's got this.
Nicole only twisted our arm pretty hard, so yeah, I would say ditto, but we talked about time on parents' part, and kind of back to what she was saying, do we know what is happening in that family's life? So do they have time that fits with the schedule we're thinking about? We talked about transportation as an issue and how that can impact things. Are we expecting families to come in to us? And if so, then transportation might be a barrier. We talked about communication and how transportation and communication interact too. So that looks different if a family is dropping off their child and picking them up. You may have some moments where you can interact, but if a child comes in on a bus and goes home on a bus, then there's a missed opportunity there. So also thinking about communication, then having multiple ways to communicate. So it can't just be that I'm only sending notes in the backpack. Are you calling? Are you doing something virtual? Do you use social media? But not just one thing, but having multiple ways, because everybody looks at that in a different way.
Absolutely, thank you. You identified kind of that a lot of the barriers that we talk about are barriers actually on both sides. I mean, families are hustling right now, and there's a lot of stress and, just trying to keep food on the table. So identifying some ways that we can connect and support the families in ways that they need and want us to. I had one parent, this was impactful to me, clearly, because I'm thinking about it. One parent that said, talked about how he acknowledged that we're always hearing from the school that we're not engaging in activities. We don't have a way to get to the activities you want us to engage in, but there's a huge group of us that lives right by a community center we use all the time. So why isn't the school coming to where we are, where we can get to that community center without a problem, but we can't drive the long drive into the school? So one of the reasons that was impactful to me is it was actually during that the superintendent was in the room, and the superintendent was like, he just hadn't even thought of this. as being an opportunity for growing those relationships and connections with the families within the district. So that was huge. Okay, any other group? It's okay. You can. Come on up, Heather. Thank you, Heather.
I'm also a person that doesn't like to talk into a microphone, so whoever said that earlier, you're my people.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the same things that have already been talked about with the other two groups, but we also talked a lot about staff buy-in as well. Like not just being something that we're checking off a list every year, but that it really has meaning for our families, and it's something that they're going to want to come to because we're building up the excitement to want to be there to learn about these things, and encouraging it with the students to go home and talk about. We talked about communication a little bit. I had a year with a group of teachers that would put like stickers on the kids' shirts when they went home, like reminding them that tonight was a night to come to school to do like a literacy or math games or something that was fun. And I thought, school pictures do that all the time. Like, why have we not thought about that? So that was something that I thought was unique that they came up with. We also talked about using, for families that have children that are younger, and so they're gonna bring siblings along, like what can we do to support families so they feel like they can bring everybody with them to come to the event that we're holding, so.
Absolutely, great ideas, thank you. Oh, I just love the input from we learn from each other best, don't we?
Noel?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can
More
I share?
ideas from, yeah,
Yeah, thank
go
you.
for
Sorry.
it.
I just wanted to share a couple. One solution that someone had suggested, in addition to many of the same things, was like things like play dates in the park in the summer. They talked about lack of trust being a big barrier to, and one way to overcome that is to slowly expose families to positive opportunities and connections. They talked about on-site childcare. Thinking about ways to have parents and families come into school and talk about things that are important to them, like their career. The example they give was they had a family who owned a pizzeria, and they came in and made pizzas with the children. So
How fun.
engaging them in different ways. And then one last one, no matter what, never give up on any family.
That's what it's all about, right? We're here to support our children and families, and they need to know that we'll never give up on them. So important. Thank you for your sharing. That was important. So just in identifying some of what the research says are the challenges to partnering with families, a lot of what you already said, scheduling conflicts, time restraints, maybe some unfortunate experiences with the educational system themselves. The educators may communicate with families about problems but fail to offer guidance or information. I know I've got my own story on that. I still remember my son was in first grade and the teacher was just complaining to me all the time about how he was like spacing out in class and not doing the work. And you need to come watch him. So I came in and I watched him. She said, write a sentence about your favorite memory, a sentence or more about your favorite memory. And I'm sitting in the back and I'm watching all these kids like write a whole entire paragraph and fill like a good chunk of their journal. My son is way older now and he still has this kind of brevity where he's like, I was told to write a sentence, I wrote a sentence. So what was he going to do with the rest of that time but space out and stare at the wall? Like, he wasn't engaged with that. And, yeah, that was kind of the beginning of the end with that teacher and I. So, you know, educators might neglect to engage families based on their own perception. They don't want to be engaged. They don't care. And really strength-based and never giving up, you know, and really having that buy-in from the very beginning. We have family members who are recent immigrants or refugees that may be experiencing stress and a possible language barrier. I mean, a whole entire session can be done on how do we engage families who are dual or multilingual learners and their families. We only have an hour and 15 minutes today. So really, you know, like, valuing the importance of engaging families who may also have language or cultural barriers as well. We may have that distrust, expectations for family engagement that don't reflect the schedules or cultures of families. You guys mentioned that really, really well. And then from the educator perspective, there may not be that fiscal or administrative support to take the time that we really need to have to build those trusting relationships. And there's a lot we can do to address that, but it's such a systemic issue across our state, across our regions, across our districts, that kind of really attacking this from a resource perspective is super important as well. So when we develop strategic family relationships, we're really working to develop, what does that vision look like? What do our standards look like? How do we come together? These are just some things that we can do. Coming together as a school team or as a district team to really start thinking, how are we going to start building and valuing strategic family partnerships? So our effective homeschool partnerships, really, all of you articulated most of these concepts together. You know, really thinking about how do we invite ideas from families? How are we responsive to the needs of families rather than saying, well, they're not finding a way to get here, so I guess that's their problem. How are we responsive in a way that supports those family needs? Focusing on that whole family, really sharing in a reciprocal way. What are these observations that we have back and forth? So these principles, you know, we talked about the principles for family engagement from the My Family perspective. This kind of narrows it down even a little bit more. These principles of effective family partnerships in early childhood come from the National Association for the Education of Young Children. If you were to just Google this title, the NAEYC article will pop right up for you with these principles. Inviting families to participate in decision-making and goal-setting for their child, having families and programs engaged in two-way communication. So what does true two-way communication look like? We've seen some apps, you know, people say, well, we use apps, and I mean, they're getting so much better, but even as of 2 years ago, the question was, okay, so you can send things to families. Can they respond via this same app? And that's where a lot of the barriers start. Well, no, we just send stuff to them. If they have a question, they have to email us. So that ease of reciprocal communication should be happening both ways. Providing those home learning activities, inviting families to participate in program-level decisions and wider advocacy efforts. I think another thing that's been so impactful to me have been the families who have talked to me about how they were that family who felt marginalized from the school community until they had someone see something in them and bring them a little bit in, a little bit in, a little bit in, to the point where these families became really strong, in some cases statewide and national advocates for their child and all the other children within those programs. So we can create powerful family leaders if we value that as an approach. So we're going to take some time really brainstorming what are some of the things that we are doing or could do to support these principles of effective partnerships in early childhood. You have sticky notes at your table. The principles are all the way around the room. And I'm going to invite you to take some time to really, I'll put the principles back up on the wall for you, on the screen for you. Taking some time to really think about what are some ways that we can or do support effective family partnerships. This can be a solo activity, but you get to walk around the room, take some time, review some of the other ideas that are popping up on the screen. And this is something that hopefully even throughout the rest of the day, you can pop over, take a look, and hopefully garner 1 or 2 great ideas for your program or school. So I will take you back to the principles of effective family partnerships in early childhood. Take some time with the sticky notes, brainstorm what can we do, what do we do that can really influence these partnerships, thus improving our child and family outcomes. And I'll give you I'll check in and see how things are going in about 5 to 10 minutes.
classroom as well. We wanted to make this positive. We're just really enjoying doing it so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. I will. I will, my friend. Do you want to just walk over to the next one?
Okay, if you could finish up your last bit of conversation or your last sticky note and make your way back to your seat, we will come around and debrief on this a little bit. Oh. So we had so many great ideas. I love listening to the dialogue between all of you. This is a group that definitely is planted in how important family partnerships are. Some of the, I just kind of scribbled down a few things that I'm seeing on these charts and some of the ideas that I pulled from the research combined. So when we're talking about decision-making and goal setting, ideally, I heard this from a few of your tables, ask families what they want. Ask families what they need, like get their feedback. We talked about that a few minutes ago. One of the most powerful questions you can ask your families is, what are your hopes and dreams for your child? What are your hopes and dreams for your child this year and 5 years? When they graduate from high school, what are your hopes and dreams? Asking questions about families from the very beginning. So that first positive contact should happen before the first day of school. Another conversation I had at this back table was the idea of, sometimes when we have children with challenging behaviors, it gets easy to get into that rut of we're calling with another update or we're emailing another update and it's not great. And one of the things we talked about was some cool research I just saw last week that talks about the value of tracking all interactions with families. So we're tracking all interactions with families, and over time we can start seeing some trends like, it's been 3 months and I've had contact with the family, but it hasn't been good. So what can I do to build that trusting relationship, to reach out to the family, to have conversations about hopes and dreams and supports, to find that glimmer of wonderfulness in the child and report that back to the family so we can start that positive cycle of positive behaviors and acknowledgement between the home and the school. Empowering family communication. So this is one thing I think we get so busy, it's hard to remember, please reach out to me. I have an open door policy, really being open to the family where they truly feel like they can come to you if they want or need anything. That two-way communication, like I said, kind of mapping out those parent-teacher contacts to identify strengths and opportunity. When we're mapping that, that was another point I heard from one of you is, another thing that could happen is we could have that child who's in the middle of the pack, who's just coasting along, doing okay. We don't remember to make those contacts to identify the good things that we're seeing all of our children do. So tracking those, mapping out those contacts is valuable. Working with families to establish guidelines for two-way communication, being clear on that. Some ideas around developing reciprocal relationships is developing partnerships with community organizations and agencies can be really valuable in fostering those reciprocal relationships. So a few minutes ago, I had mentioned the idea, a parent shared with me, thus the superintendent, of why don't you come into our community center? That's where we spend our time at night. We could do an activity there and we would be able to engage and participate. Those community partnerships can make so many things happen. If we're talking about where do we get resources to support a literacy event with families, we have so many community-based organizations and businesses that would be happy to participate. The first step with that, though, is to be building those relationships and those partnerships. With home learning, so many things that we can do to foster that communication around curriculum and learning, talking about getting information about the family from the family in something like a family poster or something that starts at the beginning of the school year, which is also something you can post up in the classroom. So we have that homeschool connection represented up on the walls, etc. And then when we talk about the program level, really thinking about ways that we can engage families in our school improvement teams, in planning the school calendar and events, and in a meaningful and purposeful way, because I think we're getting to the place where we're inviting families to the table. I don't know if we're getting to the place where we're inviting families to the table and they feel fully included yet. So really thinking about those strategies and supports that really can get us there. So those are a few of the ideas I saw walking and heard around the room. I was wondering if we had any big ideas from the Jamboard. We offered a Jamboard for the online participants.
Many similarities, right? Asking parents about what their goals are, both for their child and for the program itself. Getting them involved from the beginning. Same idea of good two-way communication, positives up front, asking parents what their preferences are. Someone mentioned they use a system called Bright Wheel in ProCare. I don't know either one of those. And then talking about inviting families to the classroom regularly, involving them in learning them, asking them for feedback while you're with them, so gathering that feedback when they do come as other ways to get and use that feedback. They talked about if families see their input is being used, then they know they are part of the school team, so making it real visible when you're using their feedback and making that clear to everybody.
Awesome, great. There was so much wonderful brainstorm and problem solving, both online and in the room. Okay, so you just reminded me, I was like, what was my thought? Okay, you just reminded me, when we're talking about family surveys, we use them. My hunch would be many of you have done one or more surveys with the families and getting an idea of what do they need, what can we do to work with schedules, et cetera. And to your point, whoever wrote that in the Jamboard, it is imperative to share that data back out with families. And I have gotten that feedback from families a lot. In fact, I've had families I've had to reach out to individually and say, remember, we really need your input on the survey. And the family has said, why? I spend so much time doing the surveys and I don't see anything that comes out of it. Why would I do that? And then programs come to me and they say, well, we're not doing surveys anymore because parents don't do them. So, there's something in the middle, and there's so many tools that we can use to just create like a one-pager. Here's what we learned from the survey. Here's some of the ways that we're going to implement your feedback. Your input is super important to us. And it is a really easy way to get input from families and kind of a low-effort way for families to engage too. So the important part is that feedback component, really important. Thank you for that. That was fun. Okay, so most of these strategies you all articulated up on the wall. Classroom visits, learning about the child's interests, toys, routine, likes and dislikes. For families whose first language is not English, thinking about ways to provide words and phrases in the child's first language all over the classroom. You can get district support on that, and families are often willing to help too. Giving families many ways to contribute to the classroom. So we do have families that are working very hard all day, every day, and can't come to the classroom, but there's ways that they can contribute by doing things at night or on the weekend. So kind of brainstorming those multiple ways that families can be part of the school environment. Including books about families, all sorts of families in your classroom library. So we should have classroom libraries that adequately reflect the children within our communities and schools and beyond. So thinking about that, and then inviting families to participate in the assessment process, whatever that might be, a school assessment process, when we're collecting anecdotal notes and trying to put them into our system, like what are some of those things that we can get from families that really support the work that we do. So we're going to talk for just less than 5 minutes, because I'm not going to keep you from lunch, about family partnership resources. So what you see here are some resources available for families. There's links on here. You should have access soon if you don't already. This is the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Learn the Signs, Act Early site. We are early childhood, so 90% of you already know this site. There's some great resources from MDHHS on supporting everyday moments to support social emotional learning between the home and school, and really supporting this last guide, the Social Emotional Health Guide, is a guide that for families to support social emotional learning. And finally, The team prior to me, Michelle, talked a bit about the resources available through NCPMI. These are some of the family-centered resources, because I knew you guys were going to rock out on the other resources available. And what you see in front of you are a variety of things. Like if you're looking for guidance on any topic relative to behavior concerns or issues, there is going to be an article here for you on the NCPMI site. We have backpack guides that are guides that you can send home with families that help families understand learning and development. We've got positive solutions for families, which is modules centered on supporting family partnerships that have been developed for early childhood programs. And I do know Michelle McQueen here in the back is a trained trainer on that. And we also have modules that really support family partnerships from a birth to 5 perspective. So if you've dug into the NCPMI work, but you haven't dug into the family partnerships resources, this would be a great opportunity. And if you haven't dug into the challenging behavior site, the NCPMI site at all, this will be a really fun thing for you to do, and you will get stuck down a rabbit hole. There's a lot of things here for you. And I will say with the group prior to me, that was really, for those of you out there that haven't started with the MTSS work, I think this will be a really good way for you to kind of get a good idea of what that work could look like for your program too. Here's some of the references that I've used, and that is it. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you for your time and your passion today.